Yeah, he's great.
He sounds like a great guy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Greenville Community Center. Today, we're going to be talking about what we as a community can do to help each other in severe weather. Our lovely little village is, as you know, quite remote. There may be other similar-sized communities only 25 kilometers away, but emergency services have to drive 500 kilometers to reach us from the closest large town. That can mean a wait of up to 10 hours before help arrives. Having said that, we are very lucky in that we've always had our own fire service. And thanks to the arrival of Dr. Jones earlier this year, we no longer have to drive so far if anyone gets sick. What we don't have, and are unlikely to get in the near future, is a weather station. Now, the National Weather Bureau can provide a lot of helpful information and even warn us about severe storms, but they can only do this if they build up a database of information. And to do that, they need local help. That means us. What we'd like to do is set up a group of volunteer storm spotters to pass information on to the Weather Bureau. So, what do these storm spotters have to do? Well, thankfully, you don't have to be particularly skilled in anything. Quite simply, immediately after a storm has passed, the first thing you have to do is call the National Weather Station to let them know. After that, you have to complete a report card, which is very simple and won't take more than a few minutes to do. The only other thing they ask is that we keep an eye out for any reports in the local newspaper of storms or storm damage. You need to cut these out and send them in as well. Damage that makes news here is unlikely to make it into the national papers, so these can be an important source of extra information. So, that's all as far as the duties go. Now, what sort of thing do you need to report? Well, they don't want to hear about every single storm that we have, only the ones that bring some unusual conditions. For example, we don't need to call them just because there is hail, but we should report any hailstones that are 2 centimeters in diameter or bigger. They also need to know about damage caused by high wind, especially if it uproots large trees. Again, don't contact them every time you see a tree falling over. You should use your common sense and restrict it to those big enough to cause a problem, especially on our roads. They'd also like to hear about very heavy rainfall, and more especially any localized flash floods. So what should you do if you care about our community and you want to help? Well, obviously, you'll need a bit more information and preparation than I've given you today. So we'll be conducting a training session next month. This will only take up a day, so don't worry too much about it. If you do have the time and would like to come along, then you'll need to talk to the police who are coordinating the event. And as our storm season is from November right to the end of January, you'll need to put your name down by the end of October at the very latest. But if you'd like to get in early, Sergeant Phillips is here this afternoon, and he's happy to take names now. This really is important for our community, and we're hoping to get a lot of support. Thank you.
Section 2. You will hear a tour guide giving information about a shopping district. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15 on page 6. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 11 to 15.
This afternoon, we'll visit the city's shopping district. Several blocks in the area are closed to car traffic, and I know you'll enjoy walking around there. I'd like to give you an overview of the district now, since you'll be on your own once we get there. You'll see on this map here that the shopping district consists of two streets, Pear Street, which runs north and south, and Cherry Street, which crosses Pear Street right here. Let's start our tour here on Pear Street, where the star is. This star marks the Harbor View bookstore. It's very popular among locals as well as tourists. You can buy a range of books of local interest, as well as a variety of magazines and newspapers. It's directly across the street from the city library, which is also worth a visit. It's in one of the oldest buildings in the city and contains, among other things, an interesting collection of rare books. Now, moving up Pear from the bookstore toward Cherry, the next building on the left is the Pear Cafe. You'll notice it's right on the corner of Pear and Cherry Streets. It's a great place to relax while enjoying a delicious cup of coffee or tea. You can talk with friends or read quietly. They have a variety of books and magazines available. From the windows of the cafe, you can look right across Cherry Street for a lovely view of city gardens. It's a rather small garden, but it contains a variety of exotic plants and flowers. Let's leave the cafe and cross Pear Street. On the opposite corner, we're at Caldwell's clothing store, which you might also want to visit. They sell both men's and women's fashions from countries around the world. Continuing down Cherry Street, the next building on the right after Caldwell's is the souvenir shop. Stop in here to get maps and books about the local area, as well as T-shirts and postcards with pictures of the city. Now, we cross Cherry Street and we're at the Art Gallery, one building down from the corner. Here you can see, and of course purchase, many fine paintings and sculptures by local artists. Let's keep going down Cherry Street toward the harbor. On the left, right after the gallery, is Harbor Park. It's a lovely place, and it's certainly worth spending some time there.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20 on page 7. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Harbor Park was built on land donated to the city by Captain Jones, a lifelong resident of this city. Captain Jones designed the park himself, and it was built in 1876. Exactly in the center of the park, a statue of Captain Jones was erected, and it's still standing there today. It shows Captain Jones on the bow of his ship. After viewing the statue, you can follow the path that goes through the woods just behind. It will lead you to a lovely garden, in the middle of which is a fountain. This is a nice place to enjoy a few quiet moments. If you still feel like walking, continue on to the far end of the garden. There, you'll find a wooden staircase, which will take you down to the harbor. You might enjoy the view of the boats from there. There's also a walking path along the water, which will eventually bring you back up to Cherry Street. You can see that there's plenty to do in this part of the city. The bus leaves at 1:30.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a student called Mark and his teacher, Professor Jones. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, Mark. What can I do for you?
Oh, hi, Professor Jones. I've come to ask you a big favor.
Let me guess, Mark. You want more time for your essay assignment. You're the third student I've seen today, all with the same request. It beats me why a few people leave their planning to the last minute and then think that they can come at a day's notice and get a reprieve. It's really not fair to all the students who are well-planned and organized, is it?
Yes, you're right, and I'm really sorry I need to ask. I've never asked for an extension before.
So, Mark, why should I grant you an extension when I said no to everyone else today?
Well, Professor Jones, I really do have a valid reason. It's not just the usual, like I have a cold, and I have a certificate from my doctor, or my computer crashed and I lost all my data. I wouldn't bother you with those old excuses. You see, my twin brother was planning to get married next weekend, but last week his girlfriend told him the wedding was off, and he landed on my doorstep. He was really upset. I couldn't just tell him to go away because I was busy, and of course I would have had 3 assignments due this week, and all my study plans just went out the window.
I see. So why didn't you come to see me a week ago when your brother first turned up?
Because I was hoping I would still be able to get it done, but I just can't manage it. Well, actually, I have written the required number of words more or less, but frankly I feel it's terrible. I don't want to let myself down by handing it in as it is at the moment, and I really don't want to drop my grade point average by getting a low mark on this assignment.
Well, the course handbook states very clearly that at least 5 days' notice is required for any extension, except in emergencies. Those rules were designed to make it fair for everyone, you see. You're supposed to submit a request on the proper form, and you can send it by email. And you also need to make an appointment and discuss your request in person, as you have done now. Your problem does come very squarely under the family issues category, so you probably would have got some extra time if you'd done that. I'm not really inclined to grant this request now, you know.
Yes, I know I've really messed up. I suppose I'll just have to hand it in as it is and take a lower grade.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Well, at least you've made a start, which is more than can be said for your other colleagues today. Have you got what you've done so far? Come on, we'll look through it together, and I'll see if I can make a few suggestions for a quick fix. How about that?
Oh, thank you. Yes, here it is on my laptop.
Well, let's see. Let's start with the bibliography. Yes, you've consulted most of the sources I suggested, but you don't have any references of your own, and that was part of the task, wasn't it? You need at least 3 references of your own, see?
Yes, I know. I did find one more. McDonald and Ferris, 2014.
Okay, that's a good one. I suggest you look at their reference list too, and chase up a couple more from there. You should be able to find everything you need in the online library databases, especially LanguageLine.
Yes, okay. So what about the essay structure and the argument? Are they okay, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
Well, you just seem to jump straight into your first point here. I'm not sure where your essay is going. Where's the introduction?
Oh, right. I always leave that till the end and write it after I've finished the rest of the essay. That way, it ties into what I've already written. Well, that's what we were taught in the study skills course anyway.
Yes, and you're quite right. So tell me about your ideas. What's your main argument?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think I understand the three opposing theories okay, but I don't really have a strong opinion about which one is correct. I was more thinking of explaining them all as clearly as I can, and then giving the evidence for each one. I don't think there's a clear-cut right or wrong. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Do we need to say that one is better than the other two?
No, you don't. And what you are planning to do is often the best way to go about it. Well, I've been skimming through what you've written while we've been talking, and one thing you definitely must do before you submit this assignment is to edit it for grammar and spelling mistakes. There are a lot of errors here, just simple things that are easy to fix. But still, I can see you've done the basic work, and I do sympathize with your brother. It must be very difficult for him. So I'll give you 1 extra day on this essay.
Oh, thank you, Professor Jones. Thank you. I'll hand it in before 5 p.m. on Wednesday, then.
Yes, that's the final deadline. Goodbye now.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear a lecture about the Great Barrier Reef. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 33. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 33.
Despite its name, the Great Barrier Reef isn't just one large coral reef. Rather, it's a system of coral reefs that stretches along the east coast of Australia, covering an area of around 300,000 square kilometres. The Great Barrier Reef is composed of approximately 3,000 individual reefs, which range in size from 1 hectare to more than 10,000 hectares each. In addition, around 600 islands are scattered throughout the area, particularly at the northern and southern ends. The reefs themselves are composed of over 400 different kinds of coral, the largest variety of corals found anywhere in the world.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 34 to 40.
Thousands of species of sea animals live in and around the reefs. Altogether, approximately 1,500 species of fish inhabit the reef area, including a number of different kinds of sharks. One of the more interesting mollusks to be found in the reefs is the giant clam. This huge shellfish can live for more than 100 years and can weigh as much as 200 kilos. Sea mammals abound in the area, which serves as a breeding ground for certain types of whales, many of which are endangered. Over 200 species of sea and shore birds feed, roost or nest among the reefs and islands. Many types of reptiles can also be found living among and near the reefs. Saltwater crocodiles, for example, inhabit the marshes along coastal areas. Amphibians include at least 7 species of frogs inhabiting the islands of the reef. Unfortunately, this wondrous area of the world is threatened by climate change. Rising sea temperatures have led to an effect called coral bleaching, that is, large numbers of corals dying off, especially in the shallower areas of the reef. The Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority is attempting to find effective ways to deal with this issue that threatens the reef. One proposed solution involves shading the reef in certain areas to help keep the surrounding water temperatures down.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.